Assalamu alaikum and good day to each and everyone. So today I will be discussing styles in a single poem and exploration. So in this lesson, we are going to explore and analyze a single literary text from its multiple stylistic perspectives. So what are those stylistic perspectives that we need to consider? So we have the general patterns of grammar in the poem, the foregrounded patterns of grammar in the poem, the sound and rhythm, the graphology of the poem, and the vocabulary and word structure in the poem. So, the literary text that we're going to explore and analyze is the Michael Longlay's short poem, The Cumber, wherein this poem, The Cumber, appears in his collection, The Weather in Japan in 2000. So this The Weather in Japan is a book or a collection of poetry composed by Irish poet Michael Longley, and it was published by Wake Forest University Press in 2000. Also, this collection or this book, which is The Weather in Japan, was won many awards like Times Literature Prize for Poetry, the Hawthornden Prize, and the T.S. Eliot Prize in the same year, which is in 2000 also. So let's move on. So we have here the poem, The Comber. So a moment before the comber turns into a breaker sea spray gradually rainbows. Water and sunlight contain all the colors and suspend between Inish Boffin and me. The otter and thus we meet without my scent in her nostrils, the uproar of my presence, my unforgivable shadow on the sand, even if this is this only sound I make. Longley 2000. So as we so as you observe, that poem has only one line, so that's why we call it a single poem, or in its other term, it is called a mono-stitch poem. So as you can see, it has only one line. If a poem has only one line, it is called single poem or a mono-stitch poem. But if it has a two lines, then it is called a couplet. So next slide. So next slide we have here. So as we continue analyzing the poem, we have here different sets of framing questions that will help us explore and analyze the poem, which is the Comber. So number one question is, what can we say about general patterns of grammar in the poem? So in order for us to be able to analyze about the general patterns of grammar in the poem, we need to consider the following. So what are those? First, we have to identify the main clauses in the poem and any subordinate clauses that are placed around them. So I think every one of you guys what is know what is a main clause and a subordinate clause, but I just want to remind you that a main clause is a clause that can stand alone, or it is a clause that has a complete complete sentence wherein it has a subject and a predicate, while subordinate clause is the opposite of main clause, because a subordinate clause cannot stand alone. It is usually introduced by a conjunction. So this subordinate clause depends on the main clause. So for example, we have here, she answered the phone when it rang. So in this sentence, she answered the phone is our main clause. So in that statement, the moment you will hear the statement she answered the phone, you will be able to understand what he or she is talking to. While when you hear when it rang, you will be confused, or you will be confused on what he or she is talking to. So that's why, uh, in making a sentence, you need to put a main clause and a subordinate clause as well to form a complete sentence that will be understood by everyone. So take note that there can be only one subject element and predicate element in any main clause. So you cannot have two subject and two predicate in a main clause. So you just need to put one subject and one predicate. And also in analyzing the general patterns of the poem, we also need to consider what pattern emerges as the overall grammatical system of the poem. Like for example, where are units like adjuncts and subordinate clauses position? So do they function as anticipatory, trailing, or equivalent constituents? So let's move on. So we have here answers, or we have here question 1 follow up. So this is the answer for the question 1. So we have here, uh, in terms of overall grammatical structure of the poem, which is the comber, it is comprises a single sentence. It was arranged as an octet, and it consists three main clauses and one subordinate clause. So the main clauses begin respectively with the following subject predicator configuration. So we have water and sunlight contain, suspend, and we meet. And the subordinate clause which is this is. So next slide. We have here question number 2. So in answering question number 2, we need to first identify any sequences which break from the basic grammatical pattern you have identified for the poem as a whole. Like for example, are there any places in the poem where clause structure gives way to sequences of phrases which are not connected to subject and predicator element? So next slide, let's find out the answer. So we have here question 2 follow up. So the grammatical unit which opens the poem is broken by a sequence of two noun phrases. So what are those two noun phrases? So we have sea spray and Raja the rainbow. So these noun phrases are not linked together by any formal connectives and appear to sit outside the formal clause structure around them. So as they are not obviously grammatically bound up with any subject predicator pattern, they are moodless. So we can use the tag test developed in A.3.2 to test this analysis by comparing the relevant sequence with the finite structure. So we have here the converter. So the possible questions might be, so it doesn't it? So we have C spray, Roger Railway. So the possible questions might be, no it doesn't. So they did, don't. So next slide. We have here another question, question 3. So what can we say about sound and rhythm in the poem? So in taking up this question 3, you need to first identify any significant aspects of sound patterning in the poem, and also consider these questions. Thus, number 1 is, does the problem display a dominant mathematical pattern, or or is its versification based more on the rhythm of natural speech than on a formal metrical scheme? Or in other words, is the poem written in free verse? So those are the questions that you need to consider in answering number 3. So let's move on in the answer. Oh, we have here another questions that you need to consider in answering number 3. So we have, does the poem contain any significant features of sound symbolism like onomatopoeia? If so, what is the function of these devices in the poem? So we have here the term grammatrics, which is describes the convergence between grammatical structure and rhythmical structure. So this grammatrics is defined as it describes about the relationship of grammatical structure and rhythmical structure. And another question in answering number 3 that you need to consider is, can you identify any significant coalescences of grammar and meter in the poem? So let's continue. So we have here question 3 follow up or the answer in number 3. So, since there is no dominant or sustained metrical pattern in the poem, it is largely written in free verse. So the poem was written in free verse. However, the poem does contain some metrical phases which function in support of other aspects of linguistic structure. For example, or for instance, the third line is metrically foregrounded. It resembles a dactylic tetrameter. Why dactylic tetrameter? Because the first syllable is stressed while the second and the third syllable is unstressed. So, or in or or in the first syllable we will put emphasis in the first syllable, while in the second and third syllable we don't need to put emphasis. So we with one heavy beat followed by two light beats in one foot. So we have water and sunlight contain all the scholars. So as we notice, water, we the the stress is on the first syllable and the second syllable is unstressed, and the word sunlight, this the first syllable, which is the sun, is unstressed also. So next slide. So this is a continuation of answer in number 3. So this is striking, though only of course in the context of what precedes it and in the context of other paralinguistic features in the line. Like for example, at the sound to metric level, the line is phonologically shaped through repeated semivowels like W, R, and L, or we pronounce it like W, R, R, and and nasal and stop consonants N, K, and T. At the grammatical level, coordination is created through and additive conjunction that suggests no affective concept between conjuncts. So the the connective device that has been used is the word and. So or the additive conjunction that was used is the word and. So next slide. So, moreover, the coordination operates between both clauses and groups in a technique which sets up parallels and unit framing, forming connections between these and the next line. So we have water and sunlight contain all the colors and suspend between Inish, Boffin, and me. So as you observe, all the words was connected with the additive conjunction and in order to show addition. So next slide, we have here question number 4. So what can we say about the graphology of the poem? So in taking up this question or in answering this question, you need to consider the following questions. So number 1 question is, how is the poem as language on the page formally organized, or how the poem is organized or formally organized. So, and then second, what impact does its visual arrangement have on other levels of language? Or in particular, how does the graphology of the poem complement or interfere with its grammatical organization? So next slide. So we have here answers in number 4, or we have here question 4 follow up. So we have here the underline word arrest, delay, and enhancement. So the three word are three important stylistic features which are situated at the interface between graphology and grammar. The grammatical arrest, when a clause or small grammatical constituent is broken up at a line, ending so as to make us search for the remainder of the structure in the subsequent line or a release element. So we have here a continuation of answers in number 4. So the early appearance of into is the first component of a prepositional phrase as a line final item. This into the word or the professional phrase into was put first before the word breaker. So engenders such an arrest, and the intended perceptual recovery procedure tends rather to precipitate us into the following line in order to complete the sense of this unit. So extension tends to be the reverse of arrest, in that it functions when a seemingly complete grammatical unit makes up a line ending only for the following line to trigger our vision to its perceived structure. So, so we have here, next slide. So we have question number 5. So what can we say about vocabulary and word structure in the poem? So in answering this, we need to consider these questions. First, are there any individual words or word structures that are foregrounded? Does anything deviate from the ordinary? And if so, how does the how does intersect with other levels of language like sound and rhythm? So let's look on the answer on this question. Sorry. So we have here question 5 follow up. So this rather more general question can be tackled in different ways, and there are many features of the poem which could accommodated under this instruction. So for example, it is especially interesting to see how the moodless sequence noted in the commentary in question 2 achieves further salience through the interplay of sound and vocabulary, both in the vocabulary both in the vocabulary in the vocabulary perspectives. Both noun phrases are consolidated by word initial consonantal alliteration, which is the sea spray and the radiator rainbows. So yet this pattern of harmonic combination is offset by other non-harmonic phonetic features in the second noun phrase. So we have here, next slide. So a continuation in answer number 5. More specifically, this is created through contrast both in vowel quality and in consonant length. So with short vowels and short stop consonant in tragedy set against long vowels and diphthongs and long fricatives and nasal rainbows, essentially both contrast and harmony are present in a phrase. In one phrase, we can also narrow down the analysis by breaking down the word tragedy into its morphological constituent. So it is derived from a kind of double morphological suffixation. So the modifier raj is combined with an additional and. With an additional and. So strictly speaking, superfluous derivational suffix, the quality imparted tragedy, is thus shored up further by the objectival status confirmed upon it by the addition of y. The result is neologism, which functions as a motif at two conceptual levels. First of all, the double morphology it exhibits is suggestive perhaps of developmental grammar, and its echo of the child's reductive verser invented. So as you observe, the word Raj, but the word Raj is you pronounce it as Raj, but the a sound is not present. But when you put y consonant in the last part, the a consonant will be pronounced. So next slide, we have construction so common in early syntax yet never found in other grammar. Second, the word is part of an intertextual motif, which, if not exactly retrievable from the text of the Combro on its own, this symbolizes a patchwork quilt. This symbol pervades the entire collection in which this poem appears. So that is the end of my presentation. Hope you guys enjoy, and thank you for listening.